we're calling this Finance Committee meeting to order. It is 6:46. On the agenda tonight, I've asked our city auditor to just review some of the city's financial goals with us. I believe he'll has one other item to bring up. And then if you have any questions about the city finances, you're welcome to share those as well. So go ahead. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Councilman. The only thing I had to bring that's new business is Mr. Taylor and I, Robert, if you guys haven't met him, we're reviewing the city's fee schedule for a particular reason, and we noticed that there is not an NSF or bounce fee for the city when somebody's check bounces. When they write a check to the city for the utility bill, permit, whatever it may be, or if their credit card bounces. We do get charged a fee, and the city has charged a fee forever, as far as I can tell. I can't tell when they haven't had a check bounce fee, but there's not one I can find on the code. So I was going to ask the Finance Committee to fix that, put that forward to council so that we're not charging taxpayers who are paying their bills for the folks whose bills have bounced, their checks have bounced, which feels unfair. I had a suggested of 30. That's a pretty standard check bounce fee.
For cards and checks?
Yes. Okay. But if council has other thoughts, then I'm okay with that too.
I'm fine with 30, but if they do it a second time, then what happens?
There's nothing in the code, but I can tell you that we do eventually, we have a very few number of cases, I'd say less than a half dozen, where we just have to tell the person, you just got to bring cash.
Cash or money order.
Or money order, yeah,
Right.
Because I couldn't tell you how many times, but sometimes it's like 6 times. It's like you just, we just, it can create a headache for everybody because there's reconciling utility billing. There's the work you have to do with the bank, and then you have to reconcile the whole of the city's account. So it impacts everybody from the treasurer to me, to the employees, to eventually the taxpayer if we don't have this fee paid for by them. So it seems like a small thing, but you'd be surprised if people's payments do bounce more than you think. So.
I have no concerns about that, Doug, do you?
No, not at all.
Great, yeah, well, we'll get something before council and get that codified.
Okay. Is $30 what you guys are thinking, or something else?
In today's world, 30 may be a little low, but
well, I mean, what's the best practice going on around the area?
30.
I see 30.
As long as it covers it, that's all that really matters to me.
And it does.
Yeah, that's great.
It does, right. Some of the card bounces are different prices, meaning, and it's for different amounts too. Like if a card of a large amount bounces, it can be a little different than a check. But you know how every institution has their own practice, but I think 30 covers it all.
okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Cool.
And are you adding then so many times they can do that before they can no longer do that?
That's a good question.
We should probably build that into the ordinance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like 3 strikes are out, 5 strikes are out, I mean,
3.
whatever.
Well, I mean, is it a lifetime ban? Is that what we're proposing, or?
I would personally think in a time limit. I'm not sure what the time limit is, but a year, 2 years.
That's more for you to keep track of.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, the system will track it automatically, so I'm not worried as much on that.
Okay.
Because the new system, thank you to council and ARPA funding, the new utility billing software approved that we switched to in October, it will track it. There's a whole tab on a customer's profile for bounce checks.
And so you can similarly tag them or mark them to say, this person has crossed the threshold and now we're no longer accepting, like we only will take cash, like, and that won't be a pain to track who those individuals are.
I don't think so. The system has a setting where you get an alert for a profile page.
Okay.
So like if I pull up like Nick Smith,
Notorious.
Notorious Nick Smith, it will say right there what you wanted to say.
Okay.
We often use it, for example, for disconnects. So like today was shut off day, 16 customers, 8 got turned back on. So if you look at like the 8 who did not get turned on, their profile, when you open it, will say disconnected in bold red lettering when you open it. Okay.
3 strikes and then you're on a 24-month timeout. Does that seem reasonable? I mean, does that feel like it hits the right amount of offenders, I guess, without being overwhelming or exacting?
I think so. I think we got a question.
Oh,
It's 3 strikes and then you have to pay cash.
yes, and that's what I mean. You're on timeout in terms of you can't use a credit card or check
Oh, I
for.
thought you were gonna discontinue something.
Oh, no, sorry. I meant, then 24 months of you have to bring cash. And then we can say, all right, you can pay with card again, and we'll try again, rather than trying to enforce a lifetime ban on ever using a credit card.
I got you.
I think that makes sense. I'm not sure lifetime, we probably would, I'm not even sure it'd be legal, but.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm like, it just seems kind of insane, so,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 years seems fine.
And we could just build that into we could just be the policy in the code, which would be nice.
Great, okay, anything else on that, or are we good?
I'm good. We have another question, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. If I may ask, there was 19 million and some dollars appropriated for southeastern Ohio. How much of that money did Nelsonville get?
I don't know. Do you know what money you're talking? I don't know which money you're talking about.
It came from, I was in the newspaper, and I just thought the amount was enormous, because they kept saying Nelsonville, Nelsonville, Nelsonville. And I thought, we're gonna get $19 million? But then it was all of Appalachia on the southeast side. But it came from Columbus.
I know there's major funding. I thought it was 12 for the jail. I don't know if anybody read that article. And major funding for the sewer plant project to the tune of 16. But I'm just 19's not sticking out in my mind. I don't.
Maybe it's the-
Or-
Oh, could be. There is a new opioid settlement I sent to council and the city manager about. The first opioid settlement we get is very small, unfortunately. It's like $1,500 a year. I still think it's insulting because the Sackler company, I don't mind saying their name, the Sackler company apparently thought $1,500 a year would pay for what the drug crisis has done to places like Nelsonville, but sorry, I'm off topic. The other things, I know you said financial goals and vision. Since we've had transition, not just with this committee, but in the city manager's position and elsewhere, I think it's most helpful to know that the basic outline that the auditor's office has and has had some agreement and good agreement from council on in the last couple of years has been a rough outline of our vision is that the money is safe and the money is growing and being invested back in the community. There's a lot of definitions for that, so there's not possibly enough seconds in a 20-minute meeting for us to go over all that, but that is the vision for us to build the policies on. Some of the examples I give are stronger procedures on payroll. The software upgrade creates an immense amount of accountability, not just for the auditor's office, but a department head, city manager, and the city as a whole. It creates very easily trackable system. And I think growing that way towards that and having a finance committee and a council understanding that things like those policies can impact bad practices or dishonesty in government, I think is important. Obviously, you guys come from many different roles. And I'm just meeting the city manager, so everyone's gonna have their own, or hopefully have their own ideas on that. I'd love to hear them. One of the primary things that's in my auditor's report every single month, one of the primary things that I put forward as a goal for not just my office, but for the city and for city council is what's called the healthy fund, healthy balance and healthy fund balances. And that's defined as a fund in the city having 6 months worth of expenses in reserve. Some cities define theirs as little as 1 month. When I took over in December of 2019, there was 22 days worth of reserve in the general fund, which by nobody's standard was healthy. So I use the 6 month standard. That's an often standard used for companies and households. And what that does is not just leave it there forever, but there are things that happen, especially if you've been on council long enough, you know, they're just things that happen that are very expensive. They can be emergencies, weather events, disasters, breaks, as Jason knows, breaks, shutdowns, closure, recession, whatever the word is for the event, something can happen. In the past, I felt Nelsonville has been woefully underprepared financially for those for a number of reasons, not always our fault. And that's my primary goal. It's not just that we're improving our processes, but there is money to invest in those moments, whatever that moment is. That eternal recession that people say has been coming for 2 years and never hits, or whatever. I don't know what it is, you know. I can't yet predict the future, but working on it. And then, of course, having that safety and security frees up the city council, and particularly the administration of the city, the department heads, and the city manager, to be able to make decisions on investments that aren't just sound rationally and logically, but they come from a place of safety. You know you're not going to be broke tomorrow, so you can invest a large sum in something like fixing the streets. That's been my goal since day one. We don't have 6 months worth of expenses in every fund, but I'm hopeful to keep building towards that direction and give you guys the ability to invest in Nelsonville the way it deserves.
Generally speaking, how close are we to 6 months?
Close in the general fund. Close in the general fund. Water is there. Sewer's it will be there this year. But we do have $300,000 in sewer loan payments coming due each year next year. Our surplus, I'm gonna get into a bunch of financial terms that I told Tracy like the first day, I'm like, it's okay if your eyes glaze over every time I speak because I'm an auditor. So I'm aware this is the effect auditors have on people. The surplus in the sewer fund is not quite yet 300,000. And the reason I say that's important is because once those payments hit, we will be immediately in the deficit territory in the sewer fund, but not bad. A very small deficit compared to what it would have been a few years ago. So I'm hopeful with like the new meters that are almost completely done. And council has put the city in a position over the last few years, expense-wise, I think we might get there where we might break even with those payments. So yeah, and that was a big deal because we were in deficit in 2019 in the sewer fund. So we've really reversed the fortunes there. So we're almost there, and I think we're almost to that big cliff that actually won't be too bad of a cliff for us. And then some of the other major funds, capital is there. The street funds are there. Of course, part of those funds are set aside for the major canal project next year. And the other funds, those are the major ones. Any ones you're thinking about? Rec fund, not really. Rec fund has always been, it's got a 0.5 mil levy. It's not that I'm not thankful to the voters for it. I campaign for it each year. It comes up, and I am thankful, and then it's well earned, and but it's just a small amount, so it's difficult.
Thank you, Taylor.
Is that good?
That was great.
Okay.
So the street committee is scheduled to convene shortly, but is there any other questions before we?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So at some point, we should probably discuss the fire chief position raise. At some point, we're basically up against it tonight, but I just want to put that on the radar.
Has that been requested?
Not necessarily,
So,
but it's kind of a carryover from last year's discussions.
yeah, I would like to have a bigger discussion
Exactly.
about how I feel like we need a more formalized system of receiving, responding to, and evaluating raise requests for department heads. It doesn't seem that there's a rhyme or reason, and I'd like to see us have some sort of more structured approach, because I'm totally, I want to keep good people and pay them fairly, but I'd like to do so in an orderly way. So yeah, that's a good point, and I think we should evaluate the underlying system as well.
I agree.
Great, anything else?
That's good. So
Great, then we will conclude our finance meeting.